are the top 10 worst of the year. Honestly, man, how do I put this? I didn't upload a lot this year, and that's mainly because I've been very busy, but in the case of these movies, I didn't review a lot of them for very obvious reasons. They're not that great, but they're not necessarily awful enough for me to get passionate about my hatred about them. They're mainly just mundane, mediocre, and for lack of a better term, just cookie cutter, and that lack of passion just made me less passionate about doing videos about them. Don't get me wrong, there are movies on this list that I didn't review that I will get passionate about in this video, but truth be told, man, I did not want to talk about these movies. I did not like sitting through these movies, but now I get to say adieu to them. Before we get into just the 10 absolute pieces of garbage of the whole year, I get to say goodbye to 5 other movies. 5 movies that were awful. I would never want to see them again. But they're not as bad as the 10 that I will be talking about. While The Meg 2 was awful with horrendous characters, awful writing, and terrible as all hell CGI. Truth be told, the only reason why it's not on this list is because I kind of knew that going in. I kind of knew it would have all of those things because the first Meg had all of those things, so I can't really get mad about it for having something that I knew was going to be in it going in. The Little Mermaid is just another Disney remake, and for God's sake, stop it. I never liked the Disney remakes, and this is just another one. Another one with awful CGI that doesn't need to happen, that is so mundane and bland in terms of every single person's performance that I am just constantly reminded, why am I not just rewatching the original instead of spending my time with this movie that is a million times worse? I actually really like My Big Fat Greek Wedding. It's a movie that I grew up with. My Big Fat Greek Wedding 3, on the other hand, is a movie that felt like it had to be made. A movie that felt like if they didn't make a third film, they would lose the rights to. And because of that, every single thing in this movie feels half-assed. From the editing, to the acting, to the writing, everything feels like it needs to be there because we need to keep the rights to this movie. And because of that, it just felt passionless, half-assed, and just awful. Anyone But You is a film that has been getting really good reviews, but honestly, I couldn't stand this movie. This is every single rom-com cliche in the books with awful acting and awful comedy to go along with it. I got bored with this movie 30 minutes in. Freelance is a movie that got bombed when it first came out, and while I understand that, and understand the fact that the acting's not good, the action's not good, and my god, the effects in this movie are atrocious, truth be told, it's not the worst I saw all year, but I can't lie, it's up there. I just made the mistake of looking over at my list. Let's just get this over with. The Machine is a movie that feels like it was made 10 years ago, has comedy from 10 years ago, and yet was released today. This was easily one of the worst comedies I saw all year. Truth be told, the comedy in this movie reminded me so much of Family Guy, it was kind of insane, in that the comedy in this movie is so out of date and so unfunny, and yet they linger on it for so long. This is one of the many movies on my list that was so uninteresting that I kind of just completely forgot about it until making this video. And once I remembered it, I remembered just how bad it really was. A lot of people were divided on The Exorcist Believer. A lot of people really liked it, a lot of people really hated it. And for the life of me, I don't understand the people who really like this movie. This is easily one of the worst horror films of the whole year, with awful jump scares, characters that you do not care about in the slightest, and my god, it is so boring. I couldn't care less about a single thing that happened to any single person in this entire movie, to the point where even the ending that on paper is an interesting ending, I couldn't care less about because I couldn't care about anyone it affected. Retribution is another Liam Neeson action film. I can't stand these movies anymore. They're all the exact same. They all have awful acting. They all have awful shaky cam. And they all have horrendous endings. Especially this film with one of the worst twists of the whole year. And then after that twist is revealed, the movie just kind of ends out of nowhere. It's kind of amazing how bad this movie is, even when comparing it to other Liam Neeson action films. The Haunted Mansion had so much potential, both in terms of the ride and in terms of the cast. It's wholly talented cast that in every single direction, this movie completely wasted. There is not a single good character in this entire movie. There's not a single scare in this entire movie. There is nothing interesting that ever happens to any single character in this entire movie, to the point where it becomes bland, boring, and predictable. I could not stand this movie. I wanted to like Haunted Mansion, even with all of the bad reviews I knew going into this film, but honestly, those reviews were way too nice. This film felt atrociously artificial. They made a Children of the Corn remake. Did you know? 'Cause I knew. I knew. The only reason why this film is not lower on my list is because of the fact that in some way, shape, or form, it can be unintentionally funny because of just how serious the main girl in the movie is taking everything. But apart from that, this is one of the worst made movies I've seen all year. There is not a single good performance. The editing is atrocious. The cinematography is disgusting looking, and the ending is so hilariously out of nowhere that I was kind of blown away by it in every wrong way you can be blown away by an ending. Peter and Wendy holds the trophy for, in my opinion, the worst Disney movie of the whole year. This is one of the most boring depictions of Neverland I have ever seen. The acting in this movie is so wooden that the boy who will never grow up, who's supposed to be so full of joy and life, is so stone-faced throughout this entire movie. Stone-faced and monotone that I couldn't care less about him. I couldn't care less about Wendy, the Lost Boys, even Hook. This is not only the worst Disney film of the year, this might be without a doubt the worst depiction of Peter Pan, Wendy, Captain Hook, and Neverland ever put to screen. Although Consecration is not the worst horror film of the year, it is without a doubt the most boring. I couldn't stand this film. There is not one good scare. There is not one good performance. For an hour and a half straight, there is just nothing interesting in this entire movie. And then the ending happens, which is so ludicrously stupid and out of nowhere that it was just too late. It was too late to be that insane with your movie. Now, I'm gonna be honest. These next three, my top three worst films of the year, it was rough. Not just rough to sit through them, but it was rough to distinguish which film I hated more. Because these three films, I hated so much so. But at the end of the day, I did come down to a conclusion. And at number 3... The Exportables. This is without a shadow of a doubt one of the worst action movies I have ever seen. The cinematography is awful. The camera is so shaky. The effects are so awful. And the writing for this movie is so ungodly dumb that it's actually kind of amazing someone agreed to make this movie. Mind you, I turned 21 this year. This was the only film that I have ever seen that when I came home afterwards, I needed a drink. That's how bad it was. The Devil Conspiracy is without a shadow of a doubt in my mind the biggest wasted opportunity in a film this year. If you just hear the story, it is both so insane and yet at the same time could be so cool. It's about angels trying to stop this evil cult from creating the Antichrist. This has been done really cool before. Just look at The Prophecy or Supernatural. Those are examples of this type of story done right. This movie does that potentially cool story all wrong. This is one of the most boring looking films of the year. This is one of the worst acted films of the year. And my God, this depicts heaven, hell, angels, demons in such a boringly generic way that it's actually kind of insane that they didn't even go for just guys with wings and clouds and fire. They tried to go for something unique when in reality it just kind of ended up being more boring than what was just the standard. The fact that I would have preferred standard mediocrity to what this film has to offer is all the more reason why it is this low. And at last, we come to it. The worst of the worst film I saw all year. And if you guys remember my review of The Devil Conspiracy, you will recall that I said if this is not the worst film of the year, we're in trouble. Apparently someone has a sense of humor, because a week later I saw Fear. Now, how bad is Fear? Well, I watched it once, did my review, and then the next day, my friend came over and asked, "What do you want to do? Are there any new movies out?" And I said to him, "Have you seen the movie Fear?" He said, "No, I haven't. Is it good?" I responded, "Oh, you have to see it. I never said it was good." So we went to see the movie. 2 hours passed. We came back to his car. He locked me out of the car. And he drove around the block and left me. I don't blame him. And I don't regret it. Because he needed to see just how bad a movie could be. This is easily the most incompetently made movie I've seen all year. The effects are atrocious. The cinematography is awful. The acting, it literally felt like every single actor in this entire movie met each other 5 seconds before they started rolling. They have absolutely no chemistry. The tone is all over the place, and this is one of the least scary movies I've ever seen in my entire life, to the point where all of the scares, half of them are just unintentionally funny because of how awfully they're filmed. I really thought about putting the Exportables at number 1. I really thought about putting the Devil Conspiracy at number 1. But then I came to this conclusion. Fear is all of the stupidity of the Exportables, mixed with all of the boredom of the Devil Conspiracy, packed into one of the worst horror movies I have ever seen in my entire life. This is not only the worst movie I saw all year, it's one of the most incompetently made movies I have ever seen. I am staggered that this got made, let alone given a big screen release. I hate this movie so much so that the only solace I get from it is that after this review, I will never have to think about it again. It's over. It's finally over. I never have to even think of those films ever again. The weight lifted off my shoulders. Indescribable. Well, guys, let me know in the comments down below your top 10 or your top 5 or even just your least favorite movie of the entire year. Thank you guys so much for watching. You guys are the best. And don't forget to click subscribe and click that bell icon down below to stay up to date on all things movie, all things TV, all things nerd.